Hello, welcome to Around the Lens, episode 104. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Zach D. Roberts. Zach?
Hello.
Oh, buddy, we lost your video feed.
Yeah, I know, already.
Oh, man. One of these days, we'll get the show right. One of these days. Sometime in the next 100 episodes, I promise. Also joined with me, my co-host, Ron Hamilton. Ron, how you doing, buddy?
Aloha from Hawaii, and congratulations to my network in the Philippines, Net25. We were voted most trusted TV network in the Philippines. It's a huge honor. We're all very excited about that.
How'd you score that sweet prize?
Well, you know, it's hard-hitting journalism, and a certain interview with a certain young man from Biloxi, Mississippi, I'm sure put us right over the ledge on that one.
I know, right? But I mean, was there like online voting, or was this like a peer-based thing, or how did that
something
work?
It's something like a Emmys, something like that in America, something like that.
Is it a Philippine award, or is it like a news award?
Philippine.
Like award. Philippine.
Gawad Filipino.
Nice, man. Well, that's
You want
awesome.
me to say it?
That's great to have. What does that do for your network besides obviously just recognize it's great
recognition, lends credibility to, you know, if we're a smaller network and yet we were still voted most trusted in the Philippines. You know, there is CNN Philippines here. There's other networks, ABS-CBN, and yet when it came to most trusted, it was us.
That's awesome, man. Well, good to see the local network getting its due.
There you go.
Glad to have that. Well, we got a great show for you tonight. Let me introduce our panelists this evening. Our first one is returning panelist, BP Miller. BP, please tell us about yourself.
My name is BP Miller. I'm out of Philadelphia. I'm owner and founding partner, one of the founding partners of Chorus Photography and the Mid-Atlantic Chair for the National Press Photographers Association. And
by the way, supporting the most holiday-centric wear, and I would say
just for the beginning, just strictly for the shock value, so everybody could see it. And then I will. Somebody actually brought these to our holiday party as a joke, and I wore them for the entire holiday party. But
oh my gosh,
just for that, the hat will stay. But I think the ornaments dangling from my face would be a little distracting for the entire thing. So.
To our viewers, our listeners won't even know what's going on. They'll be like,
"Just hear a light jingling." Santa crowd?
Yes. Yeah, I am the original Jewish Santa. Thank you.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
I say, you know, wearing those, you don't have to wear a lampshade at the party. Mm-hmm. You know, you're already the life of the party.
It also covers up the increasing bald spot that I have back there. So
smart, man. I am balding up here. My hair is thinning, so I don't know how much longer I'll be able to maintain that. But see,
just long, man, and twirl it around like. You know,
that's right. All right, well, let's go ahead and introduce our other panel this evening. I'm proud to say we have a Pulitzer Prize winner, Mr. Scott Strazzante.
Hey, good to be here. And for the next hour, you can also call me white male number 5. Anyways, yeah, I'm a staff photographer for the San Francisco Chronicle. Been out in the Bay Area for 4 years. Came from Chicago before that, where I worked at the Tribune and other smaller papers. I love doing street photography with my iPhone and watching CNN and getting very irate every day. So that's pretty much my hobbies.
Nice, nice. Well, happy to have you on. And we're going to be talking quite a bit about you and your book. That's the main topic for tonight's show. So if you are watching, you know, to find out how to create like a book and kind of what the ins and outs of that are, and whatnot, and you have come on the right evening for tonight's show. And I want to say hello to all our 5 viewers, our live viewers. So welcome. Anyways, let's start and get right into it. You know, obviously, Scott, you have a book coming out or is already out. Let me make sure I'm right. It's already out?
Yes.
Great. So it's already out right now. It's shooting from the hip, right?
Correct.
And, you know, why don't you go ahead and tell us first a little bit about the book, and then kind of talk to us about the genesis of sort of how that book came to be.
All right, so Shooting from the Hip is basically the name of the blog I used to do at the Chicago Tribune, and it's also a style of photography which I've been using for many years just to kind of have a different feel. You know, even my big cameras or my iPhone, I tend to shoot, you know, away from my eye just so I don't get that camera awareness, which is not one of my favorite things to do. So I started doing street photography in 2010, even though Gary Winogrand was like a super early influencer of mine. And in 2012, I started with an iPhone with the Hipstamatic app. And so during my free time, or when I'm on vacation, or I'm in another town working, I'll just wander around for an hour or so and just photograph, you know, just what I see. And the thing I like about the stealthiness of an iPhone is that people don't know they're being photographed. And some people think that's creepy, and some other people think that that's something that, you know, I shouldn't do. But I think street photography is one of those, you know, long, enduring crafts, and I really love just the pure moments that I get. As a newspaper photographer, people know I'm there to photograph them, and because of that, they change their habits or they do something that they normally wouldn't do. So when I'm basically stealing souls, I feel like I'm getting pure moments of real life, and I just love the juxtapositions that I see on the street and the ironic moments and the characters in San Francisco and whatever cities I go to. So for Shooting from the Hip is my second book with Press Syndicate Group, which is Warren Winter's publishing house in Chicago, PSG. And my first book was Common Ground, which was a 20-plus year project, and that one I had all these kind of steps along the way, where it started out as a story on a farm, and then it became a story on a subdivision where a farm used to be, and then I combined the two, and then it was the National Geographic, and then Media Storm did a video, and then finally at the tail end I did a book. And when I first had the idea for the book, I reached out to big publishing houses, and every single one of them was like, yes, we would love to publish this book if you pay for the entire thing. And I was like, okay, thanks, but no thanks. So my next step was I hooked up with the University of Chicago, and they were interested in publishing the book. But their process was that they had to go through a peer review group first to find out whether that would be a book that would be, you know, up to their standards. And so two people anonymously peer reviewed the book, and one of them said, it's obvious that every one of these photos was set up by the photographer, that he went to the subdivision and told these people what to do. And, you know, they're obviously all stage situations. Well, since that is not true, I kind of said goodbye to them too. And at that point, I just decided, well, I guess I'm just gonna kind of go on my own. I wasn't really sure what to do. And then I met Warren, or I knew Warren, but I talked to Warren about publishing the book, and he agreed. And so then I did a Kickstarter campaign. And I had this outrageous idea of trying to raise like $42,000 on Kickstarter, and everyone said that that was ridiculous. But luckily, I had built up enough momentum with this project, and enough people knew about it that I was able to raise that funds plus about an extra $5,000. Now, the bad thing about Kickstarter is that Kickstarter takes 5%, and then Amazon takes 5%. So you're really losing a big chunk of money. And I did like the 30-day kind of process, because you could really kind of make it a situation where it really pushed people. You know, having that countdown was really a good motivator for people to donate money. And I also sold prints through that Kickstarter fund, and that raised a lot of money. So for my second book, I decided to kind of Warren and I decided to just do a pre-sale on a website from his publishing house instead of going through Kickstarter, so we could keep all the money. Now that ended up working fine, but I raised a lot less money. One, because it wasn't as epic of a project as my first one, and I think there was a little bit of Scott Strazzante fatigue. And also, secondly, there wasn't that built-in drama or that built-in kind of countdown. And so we ended up basically breaking even. We raised enough money to print, you know, an extra, I think, 1,000 books than we sold. So it's really, doing it that way was great, because I was able to, you know, pay for all the books, and then everything that I do from now on is all gravy. And so both of the books, I'll do a little plug. Shooting from the Hip is available at shootingfromthehipbook.com, and the Common Ground book.com will lead you to another site. But if you also go to PSG, just Google PSG books, you'll be able to get there. But I love books. As a newspaper photographer, it's really interesting. I've been a newspaper photographer for 30 years, and I've won my fair share of awards like every other newspaper photographer. But what most people who who know me, they know me for two things. They know me for Common Ground, and they know me for my Instagram street photography. So it's really interesting. Even though I've worked my ass off as a newspaper photographer, that's probably like the third thing I'm known at. So I think as a young photographer, if I gave advice to a young photographer, I would say work on personal projects, kind of create your own voice, do what works for you, and those will be the things that'll resonate with people. Because I do newspaper work, but it's really 99.9% of it is unremarkable. I'll maybe make 3 or 4 images a year that I think are really great, but most of the time it's just your kind of daily work. So I really love kind of just staying motivated, keeping evolving, and books and doing street photography with my iPhone are things for me that excite me, and they kind of keep me going when like daily work gets a little bit redundant. That was like about a 12-minute sentence right there. Like I don't think
Scott, if I'm going to buy one of your books and only one of your books, should I get Common Ground or should I get Shooting from the Hip?
Well, I think Shooting from the Hip is a better book. I think that I collaborated with a writer, Lynn Warren, who used to do captions at National Geographic, and she did a great job. She has maybe 6 or 7 little short essays in there, and she also curated a bunch of quotes from famous street photographers. And I love Common Ground. I just felt the book wasn't exactly what the project was. There weren't quite enough diptychs in there. And I think which was kind of what I think it was all about. But it's like that's what happens when you collaborate with people and you let someone else edit the book. You just have to let them edit the book. It's like, and this book was more of my edit, so maybe I feel in my head it's better just because I had a more of a hand in it. But I do think Shooting from the Hip turned out great. I'm really proud of it, and I think I'll take maybe a 5-year break before I attempt another book now.
I just bought a copy. You sold it. I bought a copy.
Right. And I have to say, having both books and knowing you, I think the Common Ground book is just for the project that it was, it's the perfect book. For Shooting from the Hip, it's definitely way more your style, as again, but they're 2 very different books, very different styles, and I don't think you would necessarily want the same style for both, if that makes sense.
No, they're totally different books. I think if you strip my name from them, you probably wouldn't think they were the same photographer. And I think that's part of my newspaper background, where I'm kind of chameleon, where like each day I'm shooting like a different photographer, whether it's a portrait photographer, sports photographer, shooting news or whatever. I just feel like when you're a newspaper photographer, it's really hard to, have kind of a very consistent style unless you're only shooting stories or something like that. But every day I have to kind of change the type of photographer I am.
So I'm curious a little bit about the business side of book, making and selling. Obviously, you have to be on Amazon nowadays if you want to sell pretty much anything, especially books. I think that's just kind of like the go-to place. It's kind of like if you want to have your music be seen, I go on iTunes. So you sell obviously the book on the Shooting from the Hip book website, but also it's being sold on Amazon. Is there sort of a methodology as to where you place the book for sale or what price you sell it at on which venue, or do you not make it?
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's kind of like, so the pre-sale and the shootingfromthehipbook.com, pretty much all that money, and Amazon, that money almost all goes to my publisher. Mm-hmm. And then I will, over the next year, do speaking engagements. I have a couple gallery shows and book signings coming up. And then that'll be all my pure profit. My publisher will send me books, then I'll just keep all the profit from those books. And so it's kind of where, and it's impossible to do books to make money off of it, but you can make a little bit. So it'll be nice. Every time I go to a talk, I'll sell between 10 and 30 books, and just usually sell them at face value right now, $50. And, right. That will, be an extra, whatever, $1,000 every time I go. And then like with Common Ground, the book has been out there for so long that the last time I spoke, I sold them for $20 each. So I'm kind of like discounting them as I go on. And so it just, I feel that there's, almost, different, and that's what's great with working with Warren Winter, because he is really great with kind of letting his artists make money, and he's not sitting here counting every penny. And every time I sell 10 books at a book signing, he's not, where's my share? He's really great about, covering his expenses first. And I think that's the thing about doing books, is make sure the books are paid for, and then everything else is just kind of gravy. And so that's kind of how it is right now. We're just entering the gravy stage of the book selling, which is the best, because there's there's not really pressure to do it, but it really is helpful to kind of have that money come in whenever you need it.
So these books aren't, like you said, a money maker, so to speak, for you. Like, you're not making your living on this, but they are a side income. I mean, they are something. Ultimately, you're not doing this out of altruism. You're trying to make some money off of it, right?
Right. And I feel that Common Ground was super successful, and that was a book because I think for me that was like the best project I'll ever do in my career, and I was really well known for that. And it had taken so long to get the book out. There was kind of a buzz built up about it. And now I feel that every book I do from now on will be less and less successful for some reason. But I think it's, I'm definitely getting smarter about it and being more efficient. And that's the great thing, once again, working with Warren Winter, is that he takes care of everything. He takes care of, getting the book ready for press. He, sends it to the press. He makes sure it looks good. He has the books in his warehouse in Chicago, and I pretty much say, "Hey, Warren, I need 20 books," and he'll FedEx them to me. So, I think you could have more control, and you could kind of do a boutique book, like very small run. But for me, like, I'm not a detail guy. I'm more of a floaty artist. So it's nice having a businessman there to work with who takes care of all the details, and then I just kind of get to take credit for all of it.
I noticed that you are amongst some pretty rarefied air at the PSG. Specifically, Dave Bergman is one of the other artists that create books for PSG. Do you happen to know the other artists, Dave, Mark, or Tim?
I know Mark really well. Dave, I think I've met just in passing, and thanks to Dave, pretty much his Bon Jovi books pay for everything else that comes out of there. So, that's like PSG's big money maker. So if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have this luxury of saying, hey, having these small print runs. And, like Warren is like always wants to encourage photographers to do books, but I think, Bon Jovi is pretty much supporting all of us at this point. And I think Warren at one point was trying to get Pete Souza's book. And oh my God, then we all would have been on Easy Street, because that is like the most incredible thing I've ever seen. And obviously Pete is an amazing photographer, but having the Obama brand is golden. Yeah. But that's, I just am sitting here slack-jawed watching, every time I turn the TV on, there's Pete Souza. It's just amazing. I love it.
Wait a couple years, you might get the Donald Trump photographer.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you.
That one.
Forever. Is it pronounced Sheila or Shayla? That's the photographer for him.
Maybe Shayla. I don't know.
They were just I forget if it was the New York Times or WAPO was just saying that the images coming out of the White House now versus the images from when Pete was there, and what she's actually able to, like, everything that she's getting right now is all from a distance. Like, she's almost behind the press corps half the time taking pictures. So part of me is actually kind of interested to see what comes from this, for that very reason. Like, you get hired as the presidential photographer, yet you don't have the access. What the hell do you shoot?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I really would like to, see what photos she's shooting that don't get released.
Honestly, I joke about it
in a couple of years.
I joke about it, but I mean, that might be something that's very intriguing to a general, in audience, if we get a sudden flood of photographs that never been seen before, that never were released from a Trump presidency, to kind of know, like, oh, what was going on behind the scenes during all this stuff. But yeah, like I said, if she's in the back of the room the whole time, is it really going to be any compelling imagery? I don't know. So, I've done my own book publishing, but it's all been like self-publishing through, something like blurb.com. How does do you design the books, or do you just give the photos and captions to the designer and you end up with a book in the end? Because I've had to design, shoot everything my own. That's what I'm used to. but I'm curious what it's like to work with a publisher. They take all that effort off your hands. Like, did you have a hand in the design of the book covers and, like, for instance, Common Ground and the way the type is going and all that stuff? What was your sort of role in the actual design and layout of the book?
So for Common Ground, I hired Mike Davis, your guest from the last show, to edit the book, and then his wife, Deb Ping Davis, was the designer, and she came up with the font and the cover design, which I loved. It was amazing, and I thought she did a really great job designing the book. So that was, you know, the first book where I had all this money just all of a sudden dropped on me. You know, I was able to hire a designer and an editor and a writer, and then on our second book, we decided that, you know, it wasn't as important to have some sort of linear story or to have a narrative that from the shooting from the hip, just the fact that it was all kind of different things, that Warren pretty much did an initial edit, and then I came in and tweaked it, and then we just kind of collaborated on the design. But he did most of it on this book, and you know, I was really impressed by what he did, and you know, I thought it looked really great, and you know, he had some really good ideas for pairings and things like that. And then of course Lynn Warren, who I mentioned earlier, she's been in on both of the books, and she's fantastic. And so yeah, it's kind of, now we have a team, I think. You know, it was sad not to be able to hire Mike and Deb again, because you know, I think they did a fabulous job, but just because we were dealing with a little less money this time, we weren't able to kind of hire as many people. And also, you know, the first book, I was lucky enough to have David Gutenfelder do the foreword, and then Pamela Chen from Instagram did the foreword for this book. So it's great to have friends in the business who will, you know, when you need them, you know, pitch in. So it's been a collaborative effort. You know, I pretty much, though, just supply the photos and then find people more talented than I am to kind of do the rest. But it's all about just the money you have and you know, how much you can afford. And if I do a third book, you know, I'm not sure. I guess I'll try to, you know, I guess I'll stick with the same thing I do now. I've been doing a photo essay on the Oakland Coliseum, and if that they eventually leave there, I think that would be my third book. But that's something I'm just been collecting photos for the last couple of years, and that's just a really super junky, funky stadium, just like Old Comiskey Park, where I grew up as a kid. And you know, I already have some people in mind. Tom Hanks was I think a vendor there, or a ball boy or something. He's a big Oakland A's fan. So I would love to find a connection to Tom Hanks and have him write the foreword for my Oakland Coliseum book. So if anyone has any connections to Tom Hanks, put that in his ear.
Hold on, let me get my phone. Okay. Hey, Tom, would you mind doing the foreword?
Thank you.
Yeah, he's very responsive on Twitter.
I like your idea of finding more talented people than you to do parts of the book. I think I'm going to do that for my next book. I'm going to find a more talented photographers, take the pictures, and write the words. And I'm just going to stay out of it. I'm just going to I'll be like, by me, but it'll all be other people. So
that's brilliant.
So that's great. You know, you're talking about the differences in, like, for instance, Common Ground had the Kickstarter and had the huge swath of money, and then, you know, the second book did not use Kickstarter and it had less money. Do you think maybe for your third book, even though you have this sort of publishing deal, you'll go the Kickstarter route? I mean, obviously it's a great promotional tool, even if you have sort of the funding, but is that sort of thing maybe you'll think about, or you think you just go the way you did for Shoot the Hip from the Hip?
I did. Wow. I did regret, not having Kickstarter for the second book. I think I would have raised more money, and so it's kind of, there's pluses and minuses to it. So we'll see. The problem with photojournalism books is it's so hard to break out of our little community here, where
right.
none of us have any money, and so we're all just trying to support each other, but we're all poor. So I think, so the good thing about Kickstarter is you can kind of break outside of our little community every once in a while, and I think that's really important. So with a book like this one coming up, the next one, if I do it on the Oakland A's, there's a built-in audience of Oakland A's fans and people who grew up in Oakland and people who love that stadium. I'm going to have to find a way to reach them, and I don't know if I can just do it by sharing on my Facebook page. So that's always the struggle.
With the Major League Baseball, I mean, they normally are trying to think of the right way to put this. So they tend to be a little anal when it comes to their brand and stuff like that. But in a situation like this, anyone that's seen your stuff on Instagram from any of the stuff that you do with the Coliseum, I would tend to think that maybe you could get some backing off of them for something.
I don't know. Yeah, that's maybe, but I think I'd rather steer clear of any MLB involvement. So, like my book is going to be. There's this book called Park Life by Peter Elliott, which was shot in 1977. I think he was an architectural photographer, and he went around Comiskey Park in 1977 with I think a 4x5, and did these amazing photographs of the fans. And just it's such a great moment in time. And of course, I grew up then, and I spent time at that park that year. So this is an homage to that. And so I think for me, it's more of like my back to the field, just shooting the fans, because the fans in Oakland are every major league stadium has a unique set of fans, and the Oakland A fans are definitely unique. So I don't know. I like Brad Mangian here in the Bay Area. He's done a baseball iPhone book, which was really nice. So I think I'll lean on him to find out how he kind of worked his way through any kind of trademark or copyright issues. But I think I'll be okay. But I don't think MLB is going to be that interested in my photos of black and white photos of a drunk guy laying in the aisle or something.
You bring up copyright issues, but I want to talk a little bit about legal issues, specifically like your Shoot from the Hip book, which is all candid, street photos of people. Now, what's that?
I'm saying it's art.
Of course, yeah, right. It's art, but I mean. Did you face any legal issues with that book in that you are photographing people? I'm guessing you're not getting any model releases from them as you're shooting them from the street, getting the candid shots. Is there any sort of fear that you might get any sort of somebody coming up to you say, like, you didn't get my model release. I want a chunk of that money you're getting from that.
Yeah, I think legally the only issue I would have if I would have put a person on the cover. And I think because the cover is considered advertising. Okay. So my cover is basically a shark's head with some guy's legs. So I have, of course, inside there's plenty of people, but I think once you get inside the book, that's considered more editorial. So I think as long as I didn't put someone on the cover, I'm okay. And I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. But yeah, I would love to have someone who's in the book see it and see themselves, and I'll send them like 5 copies if they do. So people, I don't think any of the photos make anyone look bad. So there's no one leaning over with their butt crack or anything, and I'm not that visually interested in just people in San Francisco laying on the street, because there is a lot of that. So I think most of it are fairly, they celebrate life more than look down at people. So I would hope that if people are in there that they won't be upset. But I do pass every once in a while someone on the street who I know is in the book, and I kind of almost want to like give them a book, but then I'm afraid they're going to hit me with it. So it's it's definitely something I worry about.
Zach, you probably have a little more insight on this. Also, is the fact that anytime that you're out of public, I think you tend to lose all, I can't think of the words, but like right to privacy. I mean, once you're in public space or anything
expectation
like that,
of privacy. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not thinking straight. Expectation of privacy. But even beyond that, unless there's somebody that's famous, it's not like they've got, like, you're not going to ruin their chances of making, like, you're not dealing with brand rights usage or anything like that where you're making an issue of them making a living because of the images.
I mean, definitely with photojournalism, there's no issue. But the moment, this is something because I'm working on 2 different kind of bringing together year-end books right now. And I'm wondering myself, for photojournalism purposes, if it was originally photojournalism rights. I'm guessing not, because there's tons. I mean, you think of Sebastião Salgado, you think about all these guys, like, clearly he didn't get any sort of sign-offs from people in the mines or anything like that. But yeah, it should never, it's never an issue. I mean, just like in documentary films, if you have somebody pass by you, even if they're in focus, you don't need to have them. A lot of times they'll blur out the background on reality shows because they're not even professing to be anything more than, you know, I mean, there's a really good chance that they could sue, and because you'll use them in advertisements and things like that as well. And there was a case, though, I've been trying to actually dig it up as we've been talking about this discussion, where a portrait photographer had actually set up lights on the street, and basically the moment somebody walked through them, he hit the shutter. And so he had these gorgeous portraits of people walking by. And if I remember correctly, I think a Hasidic man, it was I'm pretty sure it was in New York, sued him. The only reason I just remember the photo of the guy, that's the only reason I mentioned, is a Hasidic guy. And I'm actually trying to dig that up. And I remember that I think he won that lawsuit. So I don't know if there's, if you set up lights and you're setting it up as a portrait, at least that was what the argument was. So there's a larger discussion, I'm sure there's some court stuff, but obviously with street photography books, and I would also guess photojournalism, there's no scenario where you need that.
It's just like the guy that was shooting the people out his window in New York City. People, you know, cooking food, living. What was it? I can't remember the guy, but anyway, he was shooting people in their apartments.
Oh, through the window. I remember that book.
Expectation. Right, but that was totally okay. No problem. It's art, and he could sell them.
Sketchy, but okay. Little rear window, but okay.
Well, it said windows are open. He could see them, so
yeah.
It's all fair. I love foreign art.
Well, I think what protects you, Scott, is sort of like your obscurity. Like, I mean, you know, obviously you're well known. Not to be, you know, I'm not. But I mean, like, you're not huge, right? Like, you're not.
Oh, exactly. It's like, you know, no one's going to see these photos. That's the odds.
Not yet.
No, yeah. So.
Well, not until you're going to get the around the lens bump. So, you know.
What I'm saying is, like, if you were sort of, you know, a household name, right, amongst the general public, like if I go up Joe Schmo and say, like, hey, have you read the Shooting from the Hip? They're like, yeah, of course, everyone has. I think, you know, then you might face more potential for, you know, perhaps people to, because obviously it'd be more faces, you know, but, you know, you're obviously a very well-known name amongst us, amongst, you know, the public who pays attention to that. And I think maybe that's what protects you. But
yeah, well, but I also feel that, like, you know, I bet you a lot of the people who are with Obama and Pete Souza's book, like they didn't sign a release, or they just either came into the Oval Office or they were at a rally and stuff, and so they just happened to be part of what Pete Souza did, and so I think, you know, most people would probably feel it's an honor to be in that book, but I don't think, you know that book is #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So, and people are seeing it. So I think it's just kind of, you know, I think it's just how people are portrayed. And I think in my book that no one's really being portrayed in a negative light. And so I think even if someone, you know, saw them in there, I think, and you probably as photographers, you've always had this where you take someone's photo and they're like, oh, you're going to make $1 million off of that photo. I want some of that. And if they knew,
I'm still waiting on that.
And if they knew they were actually losing money, you know, like they wouldn't really care. But you know, so it's like, I think people have this idea outside of photography, you know, what their image is actually worth. I think most people think that their image is worth a ton, and when it really comes down to it, it's really not worth that much. But you know.
We had an issue with that when we first opened 11 years ago, where we had a picture up on our website. You couldn't see the guy's face at all, but he was an actor, and not a well-known actor by any stretch of the imagination, and still isn't. But it was one of those situations where, you know, he argued that, you know, having that image up on our website would damage his career. In reality, I mean, he damaged his own. But it's just one of those situations where we took that, and now we work for a cluster of radio stations here in Philadelphia, and one of them is a show called The Preston and Steve Show. Every year they have this huge event called Camp Out for Hunger, which just ended a couple weeks ago. It is the single biggest food drive in the United States. We had them, when we started doing photography for them about 6-7 years ago, we actually had them put up at every entrance to this tent. This is being videotaped. This is being photographed. If you do not wish to have your image shown on a website, shown on the photographer's website, being in the paper, please do not come in, or please let us know that you don't want your picture taken if you see us aiming in your general direction. Because we didn't want to go through that again, because you have a lot of celebrities and musicians and sports figures that roll through that tent in a 5-day period. And
Yeah.
we, rather than sit there and say, hey, we need your signature on this, we just put a blanket statement right at the, and that covers our ass. From the moment they walk into that tent, if I'm taking their picture or we're doing anything for the station itself, we're covered for that exact reason.
Can you print that on a T-shirt for me so when I go out on the streets, I can,
Yes, because, the only problem is no one's going to be able to read it because you have your camera down here. So that's
good point. Good point.
And I just, I say this all the time, and it's no secret, at least to anybody within the industry, that Scott and I are friends. And we were out in San Francisco a year or two ago, and I watched him do this. And I'm always amazed, and I will tell anybody that listens, how ninja-esque it is when he does this, because I didn't even realize, we were just walking to dinner. And all of a sudden, he starts walking a little faster, and next thing I know, his phone is out of his pocket, and it's down by his stomach, and he's taking these shots. I don't know how he gets what he gets. It's amazing. I mean, and I say that with all due respect. I'm not busting his chops at all. I'm amazed at what he does and how he's able to do it, and not only able to do it, but to be able to put a book together for that. I think it's just really, it's some cool stuff. So,
thank you, sir.
Hey, no problem.
So I'm clear. The shooting from the hip, all of it was shot with the phone?
Yeah, it's all the iPhone with the Hipstamatic app.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. I actually just purchased your book, by the way. So I'm looking forward to getting it and seeing it print. And just so I know, like obviously in the preview here, all the photos I see are square. Is that?
Yeah, that's the Hipstamatic thing. It's like they're all square. And so it's like definitely a different look. And when I first started shooting the Hipstamatic app, like every photo I took looked great. So there's definitely something about it that's manipulating you. It's like something about I think I finally settled on a combination that doesn't look super vignette-y or is not really super filtery. It's kind of, looks like a normal black and white photograph. And kind of the ironic thing is that because I've given Hipstamatic so much publicity over the years, they actually named a lens after me last year, but I never use it. I use the Ben Lowy lens, so I like the look of that one better. So, but Scott S lens, if you want to get it, it's in the Bucktown pack, and it comes with an infrared film, and which is kind of cool, but it's not very functional on a daily basis.
They still haven't come over to Android yet?
I don't know. I think isn't there like 4 people working at that company? I don't know, but I still like it.
Yeah.
Did you get kickback for that?
Oh, it was my
I get nothing. No.
Yeah. It's like getting a sandwich named after you.
Exactly.
Just out of curiosity, what do you shoot with? Like, what's your actual camera? Or is it all?
I have a 1DX, Canon 1D EOS. Never mind. I can't even speak. But yeah, I have a big camera that my newspaper gives me.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's one bonus of working at newspapers. Still, is you get free equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you prefer the phone over the big old camera, or do you still prefer what you can get out of the actual camera?
Yeah, I prefer the big camera still, and but it's nice having the alternative. And the old saying, the best camera is the one you have with you. And I was never a photographer that carried a camera with me outside of work. So It's actually good now that I have a camera with me at all times. And most of the time it's just, drunken photos of my girlfriend, but at least I have that. So it's fun to play around sometimes when I'm off work.
And the phone is always the iPhone, or if you do phone Android?
Yeah. Well, when I was working at the Chicago Tribune, I had a BlackBerry. Which did not have a great camera on it. So that's why I didn't start the iPhone stuff until 2012. I actually had to go out and finally buy an iPhone. I was in DC with my daughter Betsy, and I stole her phone and put the Hipstamatic app on it. So that's the first time I ever used it. And but yeah, it's I'm iPhone. I like iPhone, and they've never given me anything either. So it's like it's like one of these days I'm hoping that they'll throw me a bone or something.
Yeah, you think Apple would come knocking at your door?
No, just right down the street.
Oh my gosh. Free phones for life. You have the iPhone X? Anybody iPhone X users, 10 users? Anybody? No? Anybody want to drop $1,000 on a phone?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Any more book questions before we move on, guys?
Well, it seems like we've already segued into photographing strangers. So,
Indeed. Well, let's talk about photographing strangers. So I was looking at this article about some people who went out and basically decided to set up sort of a portrait photo shooting booth, if you will. They went out and made some signs, and they shot photographs of strangers on the street. And I thought it was a neat way to sort of get strangers into a comfort zone where they felt comfortable being photographed, because, you know, I've gone out myself with my camera and photographed strangers, and you just sort of have to like break the ice and get to know them and whatnot. And, you know, obviously have them agree to, you know, take your photograph, or just shoot their photograph without, you know, them really asking them, which is always a little bit awkward, but, you know, sometimes you get good shots that way. So it was interesting to see this take on that sort of stance where you go out and you have the signs and you just basically advertise that you want to shoot portraits. So I thought it was a neat idea, and I thought it kind of spur on sort of discussion amongst us in terms of, you know, how do we shoot strangers, or do we shoot strangers, or do we want to do we approach that and you know, I would say engage with people to take their photograph, or do we, you know, sort of just hide in the background, try and sneak and sort of get the portraits? CPU side, so you go first.
You know, I'm not nearly as prolific when it comes to this as Scott is. I mean, you know, he started in news and has always been there. So there's, I think, more of a comfort level of being out amongst the gen pop, for lack of a better term. Whereas with what we do, I mean, I do a lot of stuff for newspapers and magazines throughout the year, but at the same time, we do a lot of corporate photojournalism. So it's a little bit different. When I find myself trying to stretch a little bit, like I was talking about Camp Out a couple weeks ago, I actually really look forward to that every year, because basically for 5 straight days, I don't know what I'm going to be shooting. I go in with nothing on my plate, and there's so many, there's basically 5 different events that are going on at once for 5 days. And I have 17-hour days. I get on set at, I should say I get on site at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm there until 9 o'clock at night. Sometimes we're shooting celebrities. Sometimes we're just shooting people dropping food in. So I kind of challenge myself. All right, this day I want to get these pictures, and I want to do it this way, and this way. And some days I'm snipering, and some days, hey, can you stop? Let me get that picture. I'm not, I don't want to say that I'm not a huge street photography fan, because I am, but just not as a shooter myself. It's just something that I've never been overly comfortable with. I've done my fair share of it, but it's not at the forefront like it is with Scott, you know, and I think that's just one of those situations where, for me, I want to make sure that we've built our business just being respectful and being respectful of the people that we're working with. And I think it kind of goes against my grain as a person to do it on the sly, for lack of a better term. A lot of people do it, and a lot of people love it. And like, I mean, Scott's made a whole damn book out of it. I just, one of those situations like where, for me, I feel uncomfortable doing it. And I'll do it a handful of times a year just to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. But it's not my wheelhouse by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'm still scared of people. I am. It's like I never get comfortable. I still have that fear of rejection. I still sometimes get angry inside when I make a nice photograph and I approach someone and say, hey, I took your photograph. They're like, I don't want to be in the paper. And I get mad. It's like, but that's a great photo. What do you mean? What do you mean no? You know, and so, you know, but I'll definitely go through periods where I'm a little more confident, or I think, you know, if I just get some sort of verbal acknowledgement that it's okay, you know, whether it be, you know, just someone, you know, me asking someone, or if they just kind of see me and then they go about their business, you know, I kind of know that I have permission. And there'll be many times where I'll photograph someone and they'll look like they're just like the meanest person ever, and then I'll work up the courage and they'll just be sweethearts, and they'll be like, oh, great, you know, and they'll be really involved and excited and engaged. So it's definitely something I haven't gotten over. I still try to respect people. You know, it's weird. It's like, as a newspaper photographer, I'm all about establishing trust and access and spending a lot of time with my photo subjects. So I think my street photography, I'm like rebelling against myself, where I feel like, you know, I like going out there and just not having to get names or not having to get caption information. And it's just kind of, for me, you know, that is probably the biggest drag of the job is having to, you know, get names for people. And it's the scariest part of the job, where, If I could just sit back, I think maybe that's why I became, you know, a lot of my work is sports photography, because then you can just sit there, they hand you a roster, you don't have to interact with people. So it definitely, you know, is a little bit of both. But I still believe, though, that the best photos you're going to take is when people don't know they're being photographed. So it's kind of this kind of weird thing where you want to get permission, but once you get permission, it's going to make the photographs not as good or not as real.
Well, and that's
definitely a trade-off.
That's one of the other things also, and I kind of point this to Scott and also I guess everybody, is that street photography, especially since the advent of digital photography and smartphones and everything else, everybody and their mother is doing street photography. And I think that's part of the other reason that I didn't necessarily want to get into it, is because I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. And it's like, if you look on Instagram, everything is street photography. Like, everything is street photography. And I feel like there are other aspects of photography that are just kind of being lost, maybe for lack of a better term. So I'm not, you know, and maybe Zach or you guys have a better insight on this. I just feel like it's being overdone to the point of people are getting burned out on street photography also.
Well, you know what I see more on Instagram is food photography. If
well, yeah,
do something about it.
I just checked with my mom. She started doing street photography yesterday. Barely understands how to use a phone. She already sold a book. It's amazing.
Did she crowdsource it? That's what I want to know.
Enough. Yeah, she got
six-figure deal with Random House. Actually,
the food
run of 100,000.
Yeah, you know what? As an aside, and I make this joke all the time, but it's so true. I can take one of the, like, I will make a picture that I am just super proud of, and I want the world to see, and I'll get 45, maybe 55 likes. My niece will take a picture of her eggs at breakfast, and she's got 385 likes. I don't get it ever.
Same thing with my sister. And my sister's account is private too. Like, she's got like 500 friends, which I don't understand how she has 500 friends. She goes, her graduating class is going to be like, I think 100. So I don't know, but yeah, no. I think one of the things is that there's always been a lot of people doing street photography, and Instagram finally allows, Instagram and the cell phone have allowed people to do it and to look at least a little bit better than, you know, say they would have with a Polaroid camera or a point and shoot or something like that a while ago, because also they can filter and they can edit and they can make everything, you know, look good. Yeah, no, I mean, it's nothing. I actually, the few times if I do street photography, I actually go out with a telephoto lens. And that's the only way I can do it. That's the only way. I can't do obviously I don't have a small, other than my cell phone, and I despise shooting with my cell phone. It's nothing to do with the quality. It's nothing to do with the thing. Just personally, the aesthetics of shooting with it, I don't like. So if I do shoot with my Nikon, it's really kind of difficult to shoot with a, you know, big honking DSLR and a 17-35 lens or something like that. So I really like the shooting with a telephoto, like going out with my 70-200 late at night and shooting from a distance with things. And that's almost what I love that stuff so much.
That's my go-to also. I absolutely. And I'm a detail oriented. Like I like seeing the small details in images that I make. It's all the more reason that I'm always impressed with the stuff that Scott gets with his phone, because I mean, some of the expressions and some of these, just the overall feel of the pictures with the people, I can't do that with my phone. I've tried. Yeah. I even downloaded the Bucktown pack and I still can't do it. But you know, it's one of those situations where I'm very much like you, Zach. Like, unless it's through 70-200 and unless I'm away from everybody, it's just a different feel.
Yeah. And it's where it's like, you know, kind of back a couple of minutes ago, you know, if you judged what people like by what they like on Instagram, you know, I get the best response from silhouettes and dog photos. You know, it's like no one really likes my street photography. I'll get like a handful of likes. Yeah. You know, so like, you know, at the end of the year when they have the best 9 or whatever, it's always like no one's faces. It's always silhouettes or some arty, you know, mountain photo, or, you know, it's just something.
Now you have a topic for your next book.
There you go. Yeah. The
Silhouettes and Dogs by Scott Strazzante. That sounds good.
Dog silhouettes. I have a great dog silhouette in the book at the end of the book. So that's like, that's the
dog silhouettes.
The piece.
Can we divert here for a second, because I saw Scott put this up the other day and he did not agree with his best 9. Did anybody agree with their best 9 this year? Because I didn't agree with mine either.
Well, the more people you have judging a photo, the more mediocre the photo is going to be. You know, if you have 2 people judging a photo contest, you can have great photos. 20 people judge a photo contest, they're all going to be boring. You know, so it's like having a group pick something always makes it be mediocre. So I think that's what Instagram is that the masses kind of come to the middle. You know, so like they're never your personal favorites, because like you kind of mentioned before, BP, where it's like you'll make a photo, you know, and my favorite photos no one ever likes, but you know, the ones that I don't like, people somehow like, and I don't know why.
Every time.
Yep.
That's crushing. That's crushing. Yeah. When you get a photo that you love so much, especially if you post it on Instagram and then it just goes nowhere. Then there's just like, I swear to God, I never broke 50 likes. I'm not really that, I don't really do too much on Instagram, but I never broke 50 likes, I don't think, until I did a selfie that was just with my dog.
There you go.
Like, I mean, I was like, what? Look, I know it's a border collie, so like it has that popularity and everything like that, but Jesus. It was so frustrating. It's like, great, Janie. You get all the love. Yeah, sure.
Does anybody else ever feel like when they're looking at stuff on Instagram, and I apologize for kind of taking this off the rails a little bit, but do you ever look at somebody's stuff on Instagram and just get so pissed off because it's so good, and you're like, how is it that I can't get anything even remotely this good? But this, like, and they could be the best or the worst photographer in the world, but I do it every day, and I promise myself I'm not going to get mad, and I always do. I'm like, oh my God, this is the most amazing photo I've ever seen. I am so not worthy. And as we go into contest season, where we have to go back and look at our shit from the last year, it never makes me more self-deprecating than when I'm looking at other people's stuff, especially this time of year.
Yeah. No, it's especially all the year in review photo list. Where everybody's getting theirs, and I'm only on one, which which is insane. I have a photo in the Wall Street Journal photos of the year, or photos in the year, so it's not really the best of or whatever. But like, just
you're always the best in our hearts.
Seeing the guy, no, the super crushing thing is that from especially from like my best work this year has been obviously from Charlottesville, from the white supremacy protest, and there's literally a guy that I know for a fact who's basically standing next to me because I'm in one of his photos. Like, I'm in one of the photos that continually wins. I can see myself off to the side. Which, by the way, a photo that was I'm taking a photo that was just on 60 Minutes. So it's actually this kind of amazing thing. But
it's very meta. Very meta.
Oh, well, the worst ever is the Napalm Girl photo where Dave Burnett's actually in the photo changing film on the edge. You know, most of them he's cropped out, but in the wide version, he's there changing his film as the Napalm Girl's running down the street.
That's the nicest thing ever. That the photo. Could you imagine being all in history? And basically, that's my biggest fear, is being caught in some Pulitzer Prize winning photo, chimping, or worse, tweeting. Like, I would kill it. I'm in videos like at different protests, like tweeting out something, and I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just looked at the wide shot to see that what he was there. That's pretty. It's pretty funny. Yeah, it would be great if it had a picture of you in a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph, and you had your camera dangling by the side and your cell phone out. You're taking like a photograph with your cell phone. That would be the best. But I was thinking about the photo books thing really quick because I was looking at Pete Souza's book, and curious about if I should buy one or not. But sold out, by the way. But I see that you can buy a digital version of the book for your Kindle. I'm like, who buys a digital version of a photo book? I mean, that's just
photographers.
I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. You want the photo book because you want printed out. You want it on your coffee table. You want that physical thing. I mean, a photo book on an iPad, you might as well go to the web. I don't
exactly. I'm with you.
I think you have old man thinking, Dave. I think that kids these days want everything on their phones.
Back in my day,
personally, I want both. Especially when I had an iPad, because then you can enlarge the photos and look at it especially if it's a high quality ebook. Then you can blow up the photos and kind of look in details, especially, you know, I keep using the example of Salgado. Like I would kill for, I don't think that he releases his books in e-form, unfortunately, but could you imagine being able to look at those huge, you know, things that are usually printed on the wall, you know, 4 feet by 3 feet or whatever, actually being able to look at them in detail the way that you would see them in person, because it's so rare that you can actually see these things in person. You know, I mean, I think most photo books, there's not necessarily the format is the right format, but just being able to actually look at things in a lot more detail is something I personally love. But I also physically love the book.
I do that with Mike Williamson's pictures on Instagram. Like now that you can zoom in on Instagram, like anytime when he's traveling and stuff like that, I'm constantly zooming in to find these little nuances that he ends up with in his pictures.
That's another photographer where you look at his stuff on Instagram, you're like, fuck you. Oh my God, that's so good. I quit it.
Every day.
You know, that's something I find interesting about Instagram, is that I wonder how many people who are like kind of exclusive Instagram photographers can actually, if you took their photos and put them on a full screen, whether they'd be worth a damn. Because I mean, like your photos
looks great.
If your book in PDF format sent me ages ago, and your photos work full screen, like, but I've had photos that I'm like, this is terrible. The focus is off. That's terrible. But then you cut it down to what, 680 by 680 or 800 by 800 or whatever it is, and it's a great freaking photo.
Yeah, but you know what? History. The one picture that I was looking at that Mike put up last night, it was like reference. What's that diner? The one picture of the diner.
Nighthawks.
Yeah, he did kind of like a honorarium to that. And when I zoomed in, the faces, which were only that big, I mean, tack sharp. Yeah, like ridiculous.
It's wild that you could actually see that focused.
Yeah.
Like, because usually when I look at Instagram on my phone, it's not that good.
All right. Well, let's speaking of photos of the year, let's talk about documentaries of the year. That's our last topic this evening. So again, you know, Zach posted a great post on aroundthelens.com. If you want to see like a collection of all the, you know, photos of the year, stories that are coming out, and I believe it's organic, right? Because you'll add more stuff to it, Zach, as they come out.
As I've seen them, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's going to be like our little collection. But you know, of course, documentaries have come out this year, as they do every year, and there have been a ton of great documentaries. And so there's one link I put in the show notes. Rolling Stone came out with their top 10 documentaries of the year. And so I want to talk about, you know, kind of what we thought of that list, and also any documentaries we saw throughout the year. But I will say, upon perusing the list, you know, I was kind of surprised how limited I was in my ability to actually see any of the documentaries. You know, a lot of them have come out and only have theatrical runs. But the ones I was able to see, or the one I did watch from the list, was a Netflix documentary. And I think, you know, Netflix has been a great home for documentaries just on every topic you can think of, in terms of definitely getting attention. But, you know, again, like all these great documentaries, I guess they have to do their theatrical run and, you know, all their runs to, you know, get the awards and stuff and whatnot. So we'll probably see a lot of these documentaries in the coming years on, you know, Amazon and Netflix and whatnot. And there was one documentary that was an Amazon documentary. So if you have Netflix or Amazon Prime, you can at least see one of these. But again, I was kind of surprised that, you know, more of them aren't out there. But what do you guys think of this list of documentaries? Did any of them stick out to you? I know, who saw The Faces?
I went and saw Faces Places last night. Luckily, I live in the Bay Area, so there's a lot of art houses, and I live in Marin County, so the Mill Valley Film Festival. Actually, I tried to see Faces Places then, but it was sold out. So I went to Berkeley last night, and it was just a wonderful film. It was about this 88-year-old Belgian filmmaker who spent most of her life in France, Agnes Barda, I think it is.
Yeah.
And she teamed up with a muralist photographer, JR. And basically, they traveled the countryside into villages in France. And they pretty much, their loose theme was the workers. And they would go to a town, just kind of meet people, and they'd photograph them. And then they'd find a space, like a 30 or 40 foot high barn, and they would just paste the photos on there. Or they went to this small kind of half-finished town that was decaying, and they brought all these people in for a picnic. And the cool thing is they traveled around in this truck that basically was a photo booth, and they would put people inside of it, and they'd photograph them, and the big photos would come out on the outside of the truck. It was just a really cool visual. And so they would just paste those up on places, and it was just really, really wonderful and amazing. And it was such a sweet, they had a sweet little relationship too, just how they interacted. And it's definitely one of those films that I think is only in theaters right now, but definitely go see it. It's just a wonderful film, and plus it's all about photos, and that's something that's really cool. And it's like something too where you're like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I do something like that? But it's really cool when you see other people, and it has subtitles. If you don't like subtitles, you might not like it. And there's a lot of inside references to a lot of films that Agnes had done, which I hadn't seen any of them. So I think I need to go back and kind of see those films. But it was really, really, really wonderful, and just a sweet film. And definitely, if you can go see Faces Places at some point, or see it online when it gets on Netflix, it's definitely worth it.
I think if you're going to see an independent film, a documentary film at an independent theater, you're kind of the right audience for subtitles.
Exactly.
It's funny to find the one guy who's like, I want my subtitles in my documentary films. I don't want no subtitles.
This is America. If you want to show films in America, they better be in English.
Or subbed.
Well, and, of course, the one I'm going to bring up then is in Latin, which is Ex Libris, which is Fred Wiseman's take on the New York Public Library system, which is, and anyone who's familiar with Frederick Wiseman's photography, it's really interesting because when you think about libraries, like I automatically go back to when I was younger. And you would have to go to the library for certain things because maybe your parents had some of the Encyclopedia Britannicas or the yearbooks or whatever, but eventually a couple of them were missing. One of them you took to school, or you would need to find something on microfiche or something like that. So it's really interesting to see that libraries. I've got a couple friends that are librarians. My sister-in-law is a librarian, but it's very interesting. Because you don't really think about it. I can't tell you the last time I walked into a library, or I had a reason to walk into a library. So it's a really interesting documentary on just how budgeting plays out and how people still use it on a regular basis. Sometimes you tend to forget. Some people don't have computers. Some people don't want to have a computer. They don't, I'm that way with like Alexa. I don't want anything that's going to listen. We'll never have an Alexa in our house.
That's just like your wife. She never listens to you.
Exactly. Right. But it's very interesting. There are still, there's a reason the libraries are still around, and there are a lot of people that still use them. So great documentary. It's called Ex Libris, which was a really good one. The other one that I really liked, basically because it was Philly based, was from John Olszewski. And I think it was called Quest. I'm not sure. It was based. It was around two people in North Philadelphia, which is a very urban community right outside of Center City, Philadelphia. And they basically followed them. They used to stump for Obama during like the first presidency, and they followed them all the way through to Trump. And it's really interesting. It's gripping, and the interesting thing about it, and I've had this conversation with a lot of different people, is it's really interesting to watch the line between personal moving to political, because you could probably talk to any of your friends that don't talk to other friends anymore because of their political leanings or anything like that, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, that everything has gone so downhill. That's a great one as well. I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, the only from the list that I watched was the Jim and Andy, because it was on Netflix, and it was I have a Netflix account, so I thought that was a great documentary as well. Just because I saw the movie many years ago, and it was neat to see kind of the behind the scenes that had never come out. And I think Jim Carrey's interviews during it were very well done, and added a lot of insight into the movie. And plus, I'm a big fan of Jim Carrey personally, so I like that documentary.
Yeah, I want to see that one.
What's that?
Yeah, no, I want to see that one too. And the other one I saw LA 92, which is a National Geographic film about the LA riots following the Rodney King, the police getting off and stuff. And that movie was just grabs you by the throat because it's all put together with just news clips and things like that. And and it just, you know, I'd forgotten the extent of the damage that those riots caused, and just kind of, they talk a lot about the underlying tensions that have been building up for years and years between the African American and I believe Korean population there. So it was gripping, and it was you know, pretty topical, I think, and also, you know, really good historical reference, because I really wasn't paying attention to the world, I think, in 1992 as much as I am now. So it was really fascinating to kind of to see what it unfolded and why it unfolded. And I think, you know, the U.S. hasn't really grown much since then, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for that one.
You know,
like,
watching
like
go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Like, well, most of these, I mean, all you can see is the trailer and a lot of them. But I saw the trailer for that one specifically, and I thought, wow, this is like a movie, you know, like an action movie almost. You know, in terms of, it was so intense, the explosions and everything, and then all the yelling. The one movie I did want to see on here, of course, that I can't, but, you know, because I don't have any independent film theaters in Biloxi, Mississippi. Probably have to go to like New Orleans to see an independent film around here. But Machines looks very interesting to me. I like this, the lives of sort of these sweatshop workers and whatnot, because it's like obviously something, you know, we enjoy the life we have here in our country, you know, in our world, but, you know, there's a subset of the world that is just doing the worst of the worst. That'd be an interesting documentary. But what?
No, I was just going to say about LA 92 and the fact, like what Scott was saying, I was a young man at the time. And here in Hawaii, we say, oh, they're rioting in LA. Isn't that interesting? You know, we really had very tangential knowledge of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, oh, they're rioting. How about that?
Then you went down to the surf and you surfed a little bit, and you know,
right. And so watching the film was like, wow, look at the stuff that I missed. I just totally was not paying attention to at the time. You know,
Dave,
we were looking at bikinis or something.
I've got a question, because I know you did a military tour down in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. Did you see any people trying to do documentaries of what's going on down there? Because I'm assuming in the next year or so we're going to get flooded with a lot of documentaries of what's happening down in what happened and what continues to happen down in Puerto Rico. I was just curious to see in your tours doing what you were doing down there with the military, if you happen to come across any of that.
Sure. So, I mean, I saw lots of media out there. I mean, we were right next to the media who were, you know, coming into the country to, you know, we were the first stop for them. You know, San Juan, the convention center was the hub of all activity in Puerto Rico. So all the media came through there because it was a location with electricity, with internet access. And, you know, many of them, New York Times, CNN, every single media agency you can think of that came to Puerto Rico to cover the story came through there. As far as if anyone was doing explicitly a documentary about sort of the devastation, there was no one explicitly who was doing it. Everyone was down there to cover the news and create stories that were going to be blasted out as soon as possible. But I'd be hard-pressed to believe that there weren't people down there who were shooting tons and tons of footage, which will eventually find its way into a documentary down the road when they make Puerto Rico a year later or something like that. And it talks about, you know, the devastation. They'll use, of course, the footage. And, you know, there's probably a lot of Puerto Rican actual news agencies and photographers down there who were there right when it happened, and will probably get the most gripping footage of, you know, the hurricane as it's hitting and the immediate aftermath. That will find its way into many documentaries. So, you know, there was no one I interacted with who was specifically there to create a documentary. They were all there, you know, on some news corporation's dime, trying to capture the story because that's what they had to do. But yeah, you'll see probably a lot of the content created by those companies in documentaries in the coming years as they come out.
Cool. Yeah.
And of course, one documentary that wasn't on the list, Zach. Of course, but yours came out in 2016, right? Yours came out in 2016, right?
Yeah, we have a new update to it coming out because obviously the election happened. New update with a bunch of new footage and new stuff. The best democracy money can buy. But one film that wasn't on there that I also highly recommend is Icarus, which is about the Russian doping program in. And obviously that kind of blew up in their face. But it's amazing because he actually puts himself first person through the program. It's very Super Size Me in its kind of style, and and so the fact that he proved it, and the guy ended up having to flee to the States and get got threats, and so it's I was surprised because usually I have absolutely no interest in sports documentaries of any kind that have anything to really to do with it, and this one gripped me throughout the whole film.
I want to have someone on the show who's actually had a documentary done about them. So Scott, have someone do a documentary about you.
Okay.
I'm going to be in a documentary usually about me on MSNBC next year.
Oh, there you go.
Great. You'll come on.
They interviewed me for it, so yeah.
Awesome.
I had to. It was super awkward, and I shouldn't. It's like behind the scenes documentary stuff. Me and another photographer, they had us set up as if we were going out into the field the night before. So they had the lights on and everything like that, and I'm considering whether I'm taking this thing and doing this whole thing. It was super, super awkward to be on the other side of the camera.
Nice. Well, we'll talk about that when it comes out for sure. All right. Well, that's going to end the show this week. Why don't we throw it out to you guys? What do you want to pitch? Scott, of course, I'm sure you want to pitch your books. Anything else you'd like to pitch?
The San Francisco Chronicles Year in Photos is going to be coming out soon, so you might want to take a look for that. It'll be on sanfranciscochronicle.com, which kind of makes sense, or sfgate.com. We have two websites. So we have some really talented people who have joined our staff on the visual side in the last year, and we're going to have a really great pictures of the year set up where each photographer will have his own gallery, and we'll have audio components of the photographers talking about their favorite images. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. That'll be coming out in the next week, so keep an eye out for that. And also, yes, shootingfromthehipbook.com, please. I need to get some Christmas gifts for my kids still, so get that money coming in, please.
Well, I mean, a book, what does a kid love more than a photo book?
No, my kid doesn't want a book. I need money to buy them non-book items.
Signed by the author.
Hey, man, those books are my great stocking stuffers. Let me tell you.
They're good for kindling.
Well, you got one sale from me, so I bought a book. So I highly recommend everybody listening buy Scott's books.
Yes,
both of them. And Brian, what do you want to throw out?
A couple different things. Let me see. As much as I hate to say this, if you are an NPPA member and you've been thinking about re-upping, I would do it before the end of the year because our prices are about to go up. It's the first time in 11 years. They've got a special going on right now. If you go to nppa.org, you can still, it doesn't matter when your membership lapses. You can re-up right now for the 2017 price because the 2018 price is going up. Also, a big fan of this, and I pick this out any chance I get. The Northern Shore course in photojournalism is coming up in Fairfax, Virginia, March 1st to 3rd. Registration is open. They always have all kinds of great stuff that goes on there. Portfolio reviews. They're just starting to announce their speakers for the 2018 short. I highly recommend, especially if you're a college student and you're watching this. You learn a lot during the events itself, but you learn even more. And I know probably Michelle and John hate when I say this, but you learn even more at the bar afterwards. Everyone just goes in, especially at the Fairfax location. It's this huge cavernous lobby area, and you can look in almost any corner, and you can see like a Carol Guzzi sitting with a student, and you just see their faces with the glow of the iPad, and they're looking at pictures and getting information, and people are just sitting there talking and networking. It's huge. I'm a huge fan. It's something that I hold really dear to my heart. If you've never been, I highly suggest northernshorecourse.org. Go check it out. And if you're so inclined to follow me on Instagram, you'll see the occasional photojournalism stuff. You'll see pictures of my dog because, as we all know, that's what gets all the likes. Chorus_photography, and on Twitter @ChorusPhotog. Drop a line, say hi. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome, great. Yeah, I saw Carol when I was in Puerto Rico. So
yes, yeah. Carol is the last couple of years she's rolled through the Northern Shore. It's a good time. It really is. A lot of learning, but a lot of fun.
Definitely. Maybe they'll want a visual journalism panel hosted by the host of a visual journalism podcast.
All you have to do is submit. That's it. Submit your coursework. They'll listen to anybody. I can't promise you'll get in. I've been pitching for a couple of years, and I go every year. So,
but BP might drive you to the airport though, because that's where
yes.
I'm first.
Yes, Scott. I was Scott's Uber driver from the Northern Shore to Reagan, I think.
Nice. I went to the North Shore course way back in the day when it was in New Jersey. Great course. I highly recommend it. So get on that if you are interested in the craft.
And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Always happy to have you on, BP. Anything from you, Ron? Anything you want to throw out other than the same old, same old?
If you're interested in the Philippines and you want non-biased journalism, watch Net25, the most trusted name in news in the Philippines.
And Ron, where do I go if I want biased news?
Everywhere else.
Okay, good.
You can even see me on there sometimes. The lone white guy.
You can't see me on there because they'll never air my follow-on interviews. Darn it.
The first one was so good. They said the other ones.
I will publish.
First one was like better than anything they could ever do.
Yeah, I'll publish the full interview on my YouTube page at some point. Zach, you got anything for us before we get out of here?
Nope. Other than coming out, my film is coming out yet again. It'll be on Amazon Prime supposedly next year, so you won't even have to pay for it. I would hope that you'd pay for it, but you won't even have to pay for it soon.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott, I just noticed, I have to say real quick, I just noticed on your bug underneath it said Soul Stealer. I think that should be the topic of your next book. I think that should be the title of your next book.
Yeah, I was going to change it.
Soul Stealer.
There you go. Perfect.
Speaking of New Year's, we will not have another show until the new year. We're taking off next week because it's Christmas. So go spend time with your family and friends, reconnect with them. Listen to the show while you spend time with them, though. We actually will be doing a best of the year show. So if you have someone who you think might be interested in this show and you've never been able to tell them, like, hey, which episode to listen to, I will be coming out with a sort of best of the year episode sometime before the end of the year that you can use to sort of push people to and say, hey, you might be interested in listening to this show about visual journalism. So I'll be selecting my best picks from throughout the year. But if you have suggestions for me, by all means, send us a comment or leave somewhere a comment that I can know, like, hey, I really like episode whatever when BP was on, and I'll consider that for inclusion in sort of the best of the year episode that we do. So beyond that, please let me know. But again, this is our last show for the year. I want to thank our guests so much for taking time to be on here. BP, Scott, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next year, the first episode of the year is actually on January 1st. We'll be talking all about resolutions and, much like we did last year, what our resolutions are for the new year. I'll probably still try and do my photo a day series, although I don't know how successful I've been. We'll see, though. I've fallen off the wagon so many times, but I keep on trying to do it so many times, and I'll never give up. But anyways, we'll be talking about it on January 1st. But until then, I want to thank my co-hosts, as always, Ron Hamilton and Zach Roberts, for co-hosting the show with me. Again, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 104, and we are out.